code. So it's pretty good.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Are you able to like kind of get into a coding groove and then also able to like get out and go do orders?
Um, uh, what do you mean by coding groove?
Like I feel like I don't know, like it takes me a while to like get into the groove of coding, like I need
Oh,
some solid time.
uh, n not really. I mean, I feel like the more that you go out and have some and get your muscle and get your blood flowing, the more awake that you are. I feels like it's the hardest part is to get up and to stay awake and stay focused. Um, the more that you go out, the more focused that you are when you're back at coding. So
Okay.
I guess I'm different.
I like that though. All right. Well, so we have some people coming in and Eric, welcome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me. Yes, nice to talk to you in person, kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, you too. And I'm so sorry that I got the like date and time wrong for you like 15 times in preparation for
You're fine.
this.
We figured it out. That's fine. I'm
We
good.
all made it on the same day. It's okay. Last week I got the link wrong. So we only had like 15 people. And then like people were like trickling in and messaging me. And they're like, you put the wrong Zoom link. So
So you're panicking, trying to like navigate all those conversations. Oh, that'd be stressful.
it happens all the time. Organization's not my strong suit. So things to
Well,
work
you
out.
you I mean, you're a software engineer, right? You got a back SRE, right? You got
Yeah.
to be organized.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I
I
feel like I
figured.
jump around like a lot. And I can't,
I,
I'm not like I'm too fidgety of a human to be organized.
I gotcha. I've always considered the SREs to be gods among programmers. I feel
I
like you
feel that way
guys
about my team, to be honest.
you guys are
Yeah.
doing
Like
the hard stuff. Yeah.
I'm just sitting, I'm just learning right now. I'm like trying to help out, like take a ticket here or there. But yeah, like I'll sit in a meeting and I'll be like, I understood about 40% of the words that were said in this
Yeah,
meeting. Maybe.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
All
Not
right.
uncommon.
Well, everybody, this is Eric, also that known as the happiest software engineer alive. I would love to hear more about that too, but I don't want to cut into your time too much. But yeah, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away. And do you mind? I'm live streaming it, so it's recorded anyways, but do you mind if I record on
Huh?
Zoom as well?
Go for it. Go
All
crazy.
right, cool. All right. Well, whenever you're ready, Eric, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I mean, and this is my first time coming on here, Callie. So if I am, doing anything, out of order or whatnot, let me know. First, let me help me understand the parameters here. So is it 30 minutes, an hour? How much time do you want me to
So
talk
pretty
for?
much we go until 9. Sometimes we go a few minutes over if people have questions, but it's
Okay.
pretty informal. So if you want to talk the whole time, you can. If you want people to interrupt you with questions, that's fine. If you want to hold off on questions until the end, also cool. But we have a pretty active group, so I don't think we'll
Okay.
have a
Okay.
shortage of questions.
Sounds good. Well, then, if that's the case, I do have a hard time like monitoring the chat and answering questions when
I
I'm
will
like
watch the chat for
talking.
you.
So, yeah, so we'll probably just hold off on questions to the end,
Sounds
if that's
good.
okay. And then help me understand, anybody here, jump in. I just want to understand the audience here. I assume this is mostly like entry level career folks, or kind of what, demographic does, this group represent?
Yeah, entry level, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's perfect for what I have prepared then. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen then. Yeah, I'll have a little bit of a background before I dive into it. I do have some slides. Um, but don't over-index on like the prepared professionalism aspect of it. It's more just a conversation. The slides are more just to keep me centered on reminding me of what I want to talk about, make sure I hit all the important points. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Host disabled, participant screen sharing. Can I get some permissions there, my friend?
This happens every single week. Christine, are you here? This is your job. I'm just kidding.
You're good.
Christine's our first coding with Callie intern, so I've been trying to make the joke that this is her
There
job.
you
It's
go. There
not.
you
It's
go.
me. It's me. All right, go ahead.
All right, let's see here. My Zoom window. All right. You should see my face with a bunch of logos. You're good? All right. So yeah, brief introduction to myself. I am a software engineer at Yum Brands. I also am a developer advocate. I call myself in my free time because I find myself quite passionate about helping people early on in their career. I struggled a little bit. I found a lot of enjoyment reaching out and helping those that are, coming in to the field now. I've been doing this for about 12 years as a software engineer. I've worked for about 15 different companies in a consulting capacity or as a full-time employee, spanning small startups to Fortune 100, some of the bigger names I've listed here. For all of these, I was responsible for the code and the delivery of the digital solutions that we were making. Not necessarily the sexy stuff that Callie's doing with her SRE stuff, but kind of the mostly mobile development, back-end web development. But for each of these, in some capacity, I was also involved in like the staffing or the hiring process for these companies. So about 3 years ago, when I started calling myself the world's happiest software engineer, is when I wanted to make sure I spent more time doing the things that actually brought me joy. And that was like the mentoring aspect of the work that I do. So if I couldn't do it, 100% in my full-time employment, I figured I'd be more intentional about, not just, playing video games or watching YouTube in my free time, but actually trying to, do stuff like this, Callie. Maybe you feel similar in how you spend your time. I felt like my life needed some meaning.
Yeah.
So
Once you get off social media, it's crazy how much time you feel
Yeah.
like all of a sudden you have.
yeah, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do? And that is, helping folks try to get their first job, especially, the last few years has been incredibly difficult. So I've been leaning a lot more into that. So I do have a YouTube channel. So shameless plug there, Junior Jobs, QR code and link there in the bottom. I'll have that at the very end as well. So I'm passionate about this. Yes, in my free time, I interview recently hired junior developers to understand kind of how they did it, try to unpack it for folks that are going through the process now. You get a lot of noise on social media, LinkedIn, especially, recruiters, hiring managers, other, content creators, influencers. So I wanted to kind of keep it more focused on the actual success stories, people that we know, strategies that we know actually work. Because I'm not a full-time recruiter, although I do support and help the recruiting team at my employer. I'm not a full-time recruiter. So anyway, that's where I get kind of the content that I'll be talking through today. So as Callie, you mentioned before, it's about how to get into tech fast. So first, I just want to kind of unpack what the problem is. So if you've seen the movie Moneyball, one of my favorites, by the way, I love how it just really unpacks something that has historically not required like a technical or programming mindset that really kind of flipped it on its head. And there's a famous scene in that movie that really is the foundation for what we want to focus on. That is identifying what is the problem. Because you go and you're on LinkedIn or whatever, and you hear a lot of people saying, excuse me, well, the problem is your resume. The problem is your portfolio. The problem is your LinkedIn profile. The problem is you're not networking enough. That none of that's the problem. Right? Those are all symptoms of the problem. The real problem is fundamentally that there just aren't enough jobs for entry-level folks. And how are we going to solve that? Right? There might be, last number I checked, there was like over 100,000 boot camp graduates graduating every year, or at least in 2023. That's on top of all of the college graduates, CS majors coming out into the field. And that confound that with all the layoffs. So all these jobs now going to more seasoned professionals. The foundation of everything we were talking about today is the recognition that there are not enough entry-level jobs to go around. So similar to in the movie Moneyball, where I forgot the name, off the top of my head. I'm not a sports guy, so I would butcher it anyway. But they were the lowest of the low teams. They didn't have enough money to hire the good talent. So similarly, when you're starting out, you're in a similar position. You don't have the experience to really attract the big companies and opportunities that you want. So it's a similar power dynamic at play here. So it would be amiss talking about the job search without mentioning LinkedIn, because they like to brag that every minute 6 people are hired on this platform. That's the metric you see there in the top left.
That actually doesn't feel that high.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to the other graphic that I highlighted. Every week, there are 65 million people that are looking for work. And this is across all industries, across all roles, right? So it's not, apples to apples necessarily. But if you break that down to like a minute, 6 people per minute to 65 million per week, pull that back to a minute, it's like 6,400 something people that are looking for work every minute. And then if you break that down, so every one person getting hired, that means there's about 1,000 people that are still looking to get hired. And I'm sharing all this information not to like discourage anybody, but just once again, kind of setting the foundation of the problem statement that we're operating in. So I mentioned that previous metric wasn't necessarily relevant it didn't include just software engineers, but I think it's safe to say that it has especially affected software engineers. If you look at Crunchbase, we talked about the layoffs earlier. The latest metric I could see was this here, where you can see that even in 2024, we're not even halfway through the year yet, and we're already, 50,000-ish jobs, on track to, break 100,000, which is at, 2022 numbers. So the difficulty of the job market is not getting better by any means. And then this was in 2023. So also, I couldn't find a more accurate number. This is from Hire.com, where they evaluated, this is specifically for software engineers. And they were evaluating the demand on their platform. Once again, it's limited to Hire.com, so it doesn't include all platforms, but I think it's, some anecdotal data that's worth mentioning. But you can see when the big layoffs started happening at the end of 2022, that there was a drop. That purple segment is those with 0 to 4 years of experience. You see there's a drop there. There's a drop in 4 to 6 years of experience. And then what has taken that demand, you can see that there's increase in that orangish red section, which is those with 6+ years of experience. So once again, it's been hard. And it's going to continue to be hard because the amount of available jobs is shrinking. So anyway, that's not what I want to focus on today. I'm the world's happiest software engineer, not because I like to focus on the cynical bad parts of all the problems that I'm working on. But I want to focus on that there is a strategy for you. What this whole thing means, similar to going back to the Moneyball analogy, is that traditional ways of approaching the job search or traditional ways that you would approach baseball is different. It's not good enough anymore to just be good at your craft. You also have to be good at selling your craft. That's what it would mean for us. And just like how we'd have to break down in Moneyball the actual statistics that mattered, and that was runs specifically in the Moneyball example, we have to look at what is meaningful for the recruiters that we're working with, because you'll get tons of resume advice or, focusing on soft skills or what have you. At the end of the day, there's really only a handful of things that recruiters care about. So we're going to kind of, in this conversation, I don't have time to talk about, everything under the sun. I just want to talk about things that are the most important, the biggest movers, that if you were to change anything from this conversation. So first one is skills. And I mentioned hard skills specifically because while, yes, it is true that soft skills are important, no recruiter is going into any job search tool and typing in, I want to find the, best communicator developer, the best team skills developer, the best leadership skills developer. That is not a top level filter that recruiters or hiring managers use when they first try to get a list of candidates to evaluate. It is a great secondary, tertiary filter for when you already have a group of candidates you want to whittle down. But the first thing is getting on their radar for that first interview, because most people I work with, those, my mentees, can't even get an interview, right? So we're not worrying about data structures and algorithms. We're not worrying about your behavioral interview. The first thing is just get consistent interviews. So that's what we're focusing on here. And it's frustrating. I've highlighted some of these different languages and requirements, and it's overwhelming, right? Because each application is going to ask for 1,000 different combinations of languages and technologies, and each company's tech stack is a little bit different. So it'd be easy to look at these openings and waste your time chasing down kind of 1,000 different skills that may not necessarily be relevant for you, just so that you can apply to an opening. So that is why we're going to do a little Moneyball approach here. And that is everything listed there. You say I've highlighted some skills. When you apply for the opening, you're going to put them on your resume, even if you've never used them before. And I'm going to talk a little bit why. Some people say, hey, Eric, that's shady, that's dishonest. Not at all. There's a difference between the skills I've listed in green and the ones that I've listed in yellow. The ones in yellow, I would consider, if I was a Java developer, as like fundamental skills. I don't know what PCF, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, is, but it sounded like a complicated thing, so I put that in yellow. But yes, you should know Java, you know Spring Boot, you should know Git. Those are things you should be working on in your personal projects, whatever, and you should be confident with. But things like Log4j, that's just a logging library. Like, bro, you can pick that up in like 15 minutes, right? Or Mockito, this is a testing framework. Similar deal. If you spend like an hour, you can probably figure out in the basics 80% of what you would need to be successful there. Jira or Bitbucket, you can create free accounts. Bitbucket is just like GitHub. It's crazy to me that job applications even have this level of like unnecessary cruft in their job descriptions, but they list it as a requirement. And if you don't meet the acceptance criteria, if you could think of it, of a job description, then you're not going to make it into that first filter, get that first interview. So what I suggest instead is that you focus on like the ones here in yellow, your core language skill set, whatever you're applying for. You would have a resume crafted for each position that lists all the random other languages that people want. If they're small, I should caveat that, if they're small and easy to pick up. And then if you get called for a job interview, just schedule it for like a week out and then spend, the 30 minutes you need to like understand how to use the Log4j framework. So then by the time you hit the job interview, you can speak confidently to these skills. And it is not a lie when you hit the interview, because you would have actually had some experience that you can speak to confidently in the interview.
Eric, I did this.
Yeah?
Not exactly this. I think you made a post about this. I didn't put it on my resume that I knew it, but in my first interview for a job, they were like, the recruiter was like, listen, the hiring manager is very concerned that you don't know PHP and like you don't know Laravel. And then I was like, oh, I'm actually working on a project with both of those right now.
Yeah.
I'd love to show you. And then they scheduled like another interview with, it was like an automatic. I got another interview and they scheduled it for a week out. Cause I was like, yeah, I have to wrap up some parts of the project. AKA I had to start the project. And yeah, I ended up getting the job. I didn't take it, but I ended up getting an offer. It just turns out I don't like vanilla PHP, so didn't want the job. But yeah, it definitely worked. And it got me that other interview too, because I was able to be like, I would love to show you,
Yeah, and you just buy yourself time.
Yes, to learn
So that
PHP
to learn
and Laravel.
yeah, exactly. That's a great example. That's fantastic.
So it's controversial, but I do think it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, because that's why I'm recommending it. So what is going to be like a foundational thing versus something you easily pick up? That's going to be on a job description by job description basis and a tech stack by tech stack basis. I'm not a Java guy, so I don't know what any of these things mean, but a quick Google search confirmed for me that Log4j, Mockito would be easy to pick up. All right, so the next thing, so while skills are important, and that's what you're going to be searched on, that's how you're going to get discovered in any, like Indeed.com. If you put your application up there, if you put it on your resume, that's what's going to get searched by and get that's what sorry, what am I trying to say? That's what recruiters do a search by. It's called a Boolean search. They'll search by those skills. That's how you show up on their radar. The next thing is, now that you're in the recruiter's queue, how do you differentiate yourself from the 1,000 of other applicants that are there? And I say 1,000. I'm just speaking from a recent example we had at Yum, where we had an entry-level opening, and it was up for 2 hours, and we got over 700 applicants. So we took it down. There is just no way. We had one recruiter dedicated to that was shared with like 5 or 10 other openings. There's just no way, one recruiter is going to be able to spend a sufficient amount of time evaluating any of those effectively. So like we had to, for like our own survival, kind of limit the number of candidates that were coming in. I wish it was like this. That's why I put this here when I talk about work experience. I wish it was as simple as this. But in the absence of a lot of information about you, years of experience is a useful proxy for determining skill level, and it's an easily filterable thing that can be scanned and used for. I know skill level or years of experience doesn't always equate to skill level, but it is a useful proxy when you're trying to quickly slim down a list of 700 applicants into a manageable number. So the issue is most entry-level folks don't have any work experience on their resume. And I can't fault them for that, right? It's mostly just personal projects. But there are 3 things you can do to give yourself experience that you can still do in your free time if you need to work full-time to still bring in some income. And that hopefully helps solve the, how do you get a job without experience if you need experience to get a job kind of conundrum that you're going to be in. So first of several options, and that is, instead of a personal project, I would suggest that you do something like a volunteer work. If you attend a church, like your kids go to a YMCA soccer team, they need like a snack scheduler, or like your church needs a refreshed website, or maybe you have a cousin that owns like a hardware store and like needs help tracking inventory. I mean, the goal is just to not get paid here, but to get like a real world project under your belt. And then not only a real world project, but if you wrap that in like a contract, then you can say that it was technically like contract work or freelance work, even if you didn't get paid for it. You get paid for exposure. People make fun of that. But here's a tool that I've used called Creators Legal. It's pretty cheap. I think last time I checked, it was like under $100 a year. And you can get contracts and like track signatures and stuff. And all you got to do is just, approach that nonprofit or whatever and ask them just to, sign this just so, so we all agree that, if the website goes down or PII is leaked, like I'm not legally liable. I'm just, building this for you out of the goodness of my heart. So it protects you legally, but also means now you can put something under experience on your resume and that's time that would have gone towards a personal project. But honestly, most people don't care. Like it doesn't move the needle that much, a personal project. So that's the idea there. So looking at what I mean by that, an example of a resume, I'm not advocating the specific template here that I have, but this is just a visualization. That when you then put it on your resume, you still don't put freelancer or self-employed. I think those terms are kind of overused too. And recruiters oftentimes will disregard any work that is done as like, self-employed freelance stuff. But it's all about how you market it, right? We talked about that earlier, how you sell your skills. Assuming Dallas Coffee and Cream is like a local, family-owned business or whatever, just put like you did some contract work for them and that you were a web developer for them. And now that feels more legitimate because it's a real company with a real website. They can look up, they can contact. And then now you have, boom, a line item on your work experience. And that shouldn't take too much time either. I'm saying volunteer work. I'm saying like, nights, weekends, the same amount of time that you would have put towards a portfolio project, you just put towards something like this. It doesn't have to be 20 hours or 40 hours a week to put it on your resume. Quick story there. My first job in tech, for example, was a 4-hour-a-week unpaid internship doing mostly text updates to static websites for like SEO purposes. But that was technically me editing HTML, right? So I can't remember what I put at the time, but some sort of web specialist or something like that. And it was something. Nobody asked me if I put 40 hours a week into it or not, but it was enough that I could put it as experience on my resume. So idea number 2 is, instead of doing a personal project, you instead try to find an entrepreneur that you can partner with. Now, there is no shortage of people, and maybe you've experienced this already once you mentioned to like your friend group or your family group that you're a software developer. There's no shortage of people that are like, oh, I have an app idea. I want to do something, blah, blah, blah. And they start spitting out ideas at you. If you don't have anybody in your network that's already kind of approaching you with these type of things, you can go out and find them. These are people that are already very idea oriented, typically not very technology savvy, that are looking for somebody to partner with to help them build the next big thing. Once again, this is not something you have to put 20 to 40 hours a week into. This is something you do your nights on weekends. Have them handle the drama of like formulating an LLC, filing with the government and all that stuff. And obviously, once again, they're not going to have money to pay you, but maybe you get some equity out of it. But at the end of the day, you're not getting paid to work on a portfolio project either. So instead, you might as well work on something that actually you can put as work experience on your resume. Because once that business partner creates that LLC, well, boom, all of a sudden you are a web developer for that company on LinkedIn, on your resume, boom, and you have that line item there. Now, if you don't want to volunteer your time, you don't know anybody there, or you're uncomfortable going to these networking events to find somebody to work with, you can also go ahead and create your own company. So a couple of ways to go about it to make sure that it gets marketed successfully here. I would not say, if I were to start something, that it would be like Eric Anderson Consulting. That's a little too obvious here. Once again, we got to spruce it up a little bit, make it sound a little more legitimate. So LLC, in the state of Texas, at least, I think it's like $300 or less if you use something like an Incfile or like a LegalZoom to help you with that paperwork. And you can officially register a name with the government, and it can be whatever you want. So Premier Tech Solutions LLC is the example here. And it's all about how you market it. So you are not the CTO or the co-founder of this startup. The title that you give yourself should match the title of the job that you are hoping to apply to. CTO or founder is a little bit too obvious. That's really like nobody except for you and like maybe some friends. And then make sure that you pay your taxes, make sure that you do whatever filings you need to do. This is a legitimate company after all. It's not, you don't have to solely stand it up just to kind of pretend to put something on your resume. Here's an example I put together. I have a little video just scrolling through this little website. It took me like maybe 30 minutes, and I just used Squarespace. But you see my Premier Technology Solutions LLC. I can pretend, it's like a consultancy that does front end, back end development, and like a basic contact us form. So that way, if somebody's going to do like a background check on your company, there's a phone number there, an email. You can get these for free via Google Voice or like a Gmail account. And then you can respond to your own work history requests from recruiters. And now, since this is a legitimate company, you should be responding to that contact form. You should be building products like you would for your portfolio projects. You just build them under the umbrella of this company. And, best case scenario, it works and you get a job and use that to kind of leverage getting a job later. Worst case scenario, it even just takes longer to work, because the longer you're employed at this LLC, I mean, the more work experience you're going to have on your resume. And then the more differentiated you'll be against other candidates. So once again, not an advocate for the specific resume format, but I just wanted to highlight kind of the summary of what we talked about then. So now when you pull up your resume for an entry-level position and the recruiter sees that you have all of the skills, literally all of the skills on the job description that they put out there, and you have 3 work experience items. See, I have like my LLC there at the top. I have the contract example there for the second one, volunteering there at the bottom. Wow, you have a meaty resume for an entry-level role. Because 99% of the resumes that I review for entry-level candidates is the very top section is typically like the boot camp that they went to, which isn't super impressive because everybody has gone to a boot camp, and there's such a variety of boot camps that it's hard to tell if a candidate graduates from it. Do they actually know how to program? Right? It's not enough on its own to stand by itself. So they'll either lead with education or they'll lead with personal projects, which once again isn't that meaningful, especially since a lot of them I see are like to-do apps, weather trackers. Those are great projects to like learn how to code, but not necessarily something that you would put out as like your portfolio showing that you know how to code. So I just want to be clear here. We talked about some strategies here real fast, but all of this sucks. Like, I wish it wasn't this way. We have to play these little games. Looking back at Moneyball, they talk about kind of it takes away from the beauty of the game when they have to bring out all of these like data analytics that kind of navigate out of the hole that team is in. That's in the position that we're in right now. It sucks. I wish it wasn't this way, but you have to play the cart that you were dealt, and you have to play the game not the way you think it should be played, but the way that it is played. And this is, I would argue, the way that the game is played right now. So that's it. Thank you.
Yay, that was so interesting and so good. And I love that it was all Moneyball centered.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not a sports guy. I was a little scared. Going for a sports analogy, but
no, it had a whole narrative. I'm into it. All right, but we will now open the floor for questions. And Jimmy, you had a question in the chat. Do you want to on mic and ask it, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, I can. Yeah, I can ask. But it's in the chat, and so
let me pull up the chat.
Yeah, just referring to that most recent example that you showed, Eric. Just the positions that are volunteer or contract, like would you even need to indicate that at that point?
Yeah, there's an argument to be made there too, because you'll notice at the very top here, I didn't put like professional experience. This is just experience, because then you can fold like volunteer work underneath that. Yeah, no hard requirement on putting contract or volunteer work there either. That would make you even more stand out.
Sorry, I had one quick follow-up to that. I know someone else just asked a question in the chat, but so something in Hack Reactor, our bootcamp that they encouraged us to do was list out the technologies that you used for the particular projects or even full-time gigs that you had.
Yeah.
But I feel like, given your advice, you don't have to do that, right? You can just, using this format, list the different technologies and categories at the top that you pulled from the job description, and then kind of let a recruiter interpolate the rest.
Sure, I would agree with your bootcamp. So I don't list it here in this example because I'm just trying to highlight, in a kind of a succinct way, the elements of this presentation. I think it's a good idea on LinkedIn and on your resume to list the skills that you used, because ultimately what the recruiter is looking for is evidence that you know what you're talking about. So when I list something like Java on here, I don't really know how much Java experience you have until I see Java listed under each line item, right? So I would go ahead and list them there.
All right, and then in the chat we have you ever used Creators Legal personally, and how would you go about paid contract work?
Yeah, I use Creators Legal. As far as going around paid contract work, they have templates for like freelance work. I've used it even I do a lot of content creation and sometimes like sponsorship or affiliate agreements. I've used it for that too. And I like it because it's kind of like DocuSign. It's a cheaper version of DocuSign where it digitally tracks both parties' signatures. So yeah, I personally recommend it. I am not like affiliated with them. Like if you go ahead and sign up for something, I don't get any money from that. That's just a tool that I found was helpful. And as far as how would you go about paid contract work, I guess, what do you mean? How would you go about paid contract work? I would negotiate that in the contract. Is that what you're suggesting? How to get started as a less experienced dev. Okay. Yeah, so your the first group, and this is going to vary person to person, but it's going to be your close network of trusted individuals, friends and family, probably doing stuff for free. If not, probably doing something for unsustainably cheap. Like, hey, I'll, build a WordPress site for you for like $100, right? The goal is not money at this point. The goal is experience. Yeah, unfortunately, I think boot camps probably play a role in this. There's this dream that, I could just do a 6-month boot camp and get paid like a 6-figure salary. It does happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I would say that that is not the norm. And most people, you first need to prove that you can do a thing sufficiently well before you get like a first like paid full-time gig. So I would first reach out to that immediate network of friends and family, say you're trying to get into software engineering, looking for some projects to kind of get under you, see if you can do something for anybody. And besides that, I would even suggest things like Fiverr or Upwork. And there, I'm saying that's like Fiverr or Upwork. I mean, you're bidding against people in like Bangladesh, right? That are, $15 for a website, right? The goal is not money. The goal is a real world project that instead of spending time on the portfolio project, you're now investing into something that you can put on your resume as work experience. All right, so I found the chat here. I am starting at the bottom though, and trying to scroll up. So I want to make sure I get these in order.
You're up to date on questions.
Up to date on
Freddy's question is the
questions.
next one.
Okay.
Yep. The bottom one.
Okay,
is-
do contributions to open source software repos count? I'm not sure how those would be listed on my resume. You can do that. I wouldn't put that under an experience section. If you wanted to have like an accomplishments section, you can put something like open source contribution there. Or if you wanted to break out and have a separate volunteer work, you can put that there. I typically do have something like that for my Stack Overflow. I've contributed a lot over the years. I've a fairly high ranking there, and I like to be able to highlight that shows that, hey, I'm engaged in the community and I'm doing stuff. Yeah, so like an accomplishments section perhaps for volunteer work, I would put the open source contributions, but not under. I mean, that's I guess it depends how much time you're putting into it. Open source is so broad because some people like commit an update to the README and then say that they're like a contributor to the open source repo, right? So I guess it really depends on, can you speak confidently to the time and effort you're putting into it to list it under experience or not. Okay, so my bootcamp suggested we list our projects specifically on our resume under our experience. Would you say it's more concise? Just list that as contract volunteer work, rather the details of each project. So the marketing of it, I guess it really just depends. Like if this really is a personal project that didn't, as I mentioned here, function against a real, so it wouldn't be volunteer work if you did a personal project directly, and it wouldn't be contract work because it's just yourself. So the only way I would feel comfortable marketing it as work experience is if I went that Premier Technology Solutions route. I formalized my work and I'm putting my portfolio projects under that umbrella. Now it's a work experience.
Coding with
Yeah.
Callie is under Callie Tech LLC.
Yeah,
And it got me my job at HashiCorp. So, and it started out as a personal project. I wanted to build a website and learn some new tools. So I would say if you have a personal project that you've built, deploy it, make sure that users can sign up for it. And like that was my main bullet point, was how many users I had working on my, like using my site and stuff like that. And it got my foot in the door.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Yeah, my first one was I wanted to learn mobile development. I wanted to get a job as an iOS developer. And that was back when like iOS first came out. Uh, so I created a company, it was Anderson Family Press, and we just made little apps under it.
I
And
kind of love that name.
the Anderson Family Press, yeah, it was books. My dad is like an author. He always did like, family stories. So he put them in like a book in a like a digital book format.
Cool.
But yeah, that was my Premier Technology Solutions that then got me my first part-time job, but real job as an iOS developer. And all I had was my own little, derping around on my personal project.
Eric, a question from me. What
Mhm.
is this Creator Legal? Exactly does it do?
Yeah, so going back to the Creators Legal, I'll spend some more time there. Think of it like it provides two services that I really liked. So one, it has templates for hundreds, 1,000, I don't know, different types of digital work. So I mentioned I use it also for like sponsorship and affiliate agreements as a content creator, but I've also used it for contracting and freelance work. So as a non-legal person, I am very intimidated by legal and government tax filings and stuff. This I was able to find and a template that fit 80% of what I needed. I was able to tweak the verbiage to add, X or Y other clauses. So I like that aspect of it. And then you can email it to somebody and they can digitally sign it, and then you sign it, and then it stores it for you. So the alternatives are tools like DocuSign, which are more like, I think their target market is probably more enterprisey. It's a lot more expensive, used by larger companies. This one I mentioned it's like maybe $20 per contract, and then under $100 if you want to have like an unlimited per year. So I liked it just for the template and the tracking signatures thing, just to keep myself protected from, if the site goes down, I'm not liable for anything.
Oh, okay. S- Okay, I kind of see where it is.
Cool, cool.
That's actually, Eric, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting other people's questions with my own question.
Very good.
But I'm curious about contract work because it would make me nervous, and maybe this is just like my site reliability thing coming in, but like I would feel nervous as a junior dev creating a website, especially from scratch, and then like handing it over to someone.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, do you monitor it afterwards? Like, what happens if it crashes? Like, how
yeah.
do you add that to or like how do you figure out how you're going to build it? Because I feel like it then like maybe just go with WordPress or something like that. But anyways, do you understand
Sure.
my question?
Yeah. How do you protect yourself
Yes.
so you're not working, a 40-hour gig trying to keep something alive when you only expect it to be like 5 hours?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about how you phrase the contract. Definitely. That's why I like the template here, because it had extra verbiage of scenarios I hadn't thought about. And then, I mean, Google, ChatGPT even. I've used ChatGPT to kind of help me create a contract for XYZ, and it would spit out some recommendations. Just throw that in there. Now, I'm not a legal scholar here, so I know this is recorded, so full disclosure here. What's the phrase they commonly say? Like, these are just my own personal opinions. Do not take this as financial or legal advice. Yeah, so then you have to make sure you put something in there where there's some agreement that, after a certain date or once you get a certain approval, that, the duration of the contract agreement has ended. Any additional work would be a new contract. So then you're not, obligated to do any follow-up work for them. Or you can include something in there like, at some fee up to 5 hours a week for ongoing maintenance. You can have something like that if you're willing to, expose yourself to a little more follow-up work. But yeah, there are templates and things there that can help protect you.
Okay. And then from the standpoint of like, I don't know, maybe like imposter syndrome about like, well, you don't have the experience to, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So like when you go out into contract work, like what's a good way to like talk about yourself or market yourself, but also like, because like you don't have a mentor when you're doing contract work, or you do when you get hired.
Yeah, so that is why the very first opportunity, if you can, your close network of trusted friends and family, Like they know you're trying to get in, they know you don't know anything, and there's typically a little bit more grace there. As far as other contract work, and this is kind of under the volunteer umbrella, really, but these two services, Chingu and the Collab Lab, I didn't speak to them as much as I should have when I first walked through it, but they are both teams of junior developers mentored by a senior person deployed to work on like volunteer or small business type projects for free. And the goal here is to get experience. So as far as if you're worried about not having enough experience to do that contract work and you want to safely kind of get your feet wet with the experience, this one has the mentorship structure to help you. And each of them are pretty short, like maybe six weeks long.
Amazing. I've heard of Collab Lab. I haven't heard the other one, but very cool.
I've heard success stories from both. Once again, not affiliated with them. These are just services I've heard through the years.
All right. In the chat, you have, how do you maintain your enthusiasm and positive outlook in a time like this for tech in general and constant layoffs?
Oh yeah, that's true. So even though I am not an entry-level developer, I am very much at risk of also being laid off. Nobody's job is safe. And this answer here isn't probably not the best answer, not to sound too corny, but I do come from a faith-based background that gives me a certain amount of centeredness in a world of chaos. So I don't want to come across as like preachy or religious here, but I have found that situation, that life environment has provided me a lot of comfort, looking towards the future. That being said, in a more of a secular fashion, part of the reason why one of my ulterior motives for the free work that I do for the community is my hope is the next time I need a job, I would have a healthy network of folks that can help me find my next job. So I have been working at Yum for 3 years, and I started my own content creation journey, a year or so before that. I have continued to be aggressive at posting frequently on LinkedIn. I've continued to be aggressive at doing, free little seminars, information sessions in groups like this, Callie. And the hope is I'm digging my well now, right? Or I'm planting my apple tree now. What's that phrase? Best time to plant an apple tree is like 200 years ago. Second best time is today. Well, I planted mine like 4 years ago. And I'm hoping that if I need to harvest it down the road, it'll be ripe, ready to go.
I love that. I've never heard that phrase before, but that's amazing. Yeah.
Oh.
Like if you can't plant it 200 years ago, might as well do it today.
Just plant it today. Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that. Yeah. Someone I think is starting to talk. Who has a question?
Yeah, maybe. So Eric, how if I were to start a startup, when how do I start?
Yeah. So once again, anything I say should not be taken as legal or financial advice. These are just my own opinions. But once again, similar to how I'm very uncomfortable with legal things, that's why I used a tool like Creators Legal to make sure I had kind of all my bases covered. Similarly, there are tools like LegalZoom. There's something called Inkfile. I think they just went through a rebrand, but I'll put them in the chat here. It's called just LegalZoom, Inkfile. Might be called something else now. But each one of those, well, taking a step back, working with the government, people can do it. I'm sure it does happen, but it's scary to me. You have to like file on certain deadlines. You have to fill out very lengthy forms that are very dense in terminology and very, very intimidating. Okay, yeah, Callie, LegalZoom. LegalZoom Inkfile is just like a website you go to, and like you type in your name, you make sure that's available, you pay them money, and then they like help with reminders for any filing dates. They there's something called I can't remember. There's the name of somebody that they appoint for you in case there's like any legal or state disputes, and they handle that for you. And they kind of abstract away a lot of that complexity. So
Hmm.
you're gonna have to pay a little bit more for that. I think it's like, $100 or something to file directly with the state. It's probably 300 if you go for something like InkFile because they add a little, premium on top of it. But I felt safer paying a little bit extra to get that.
And how much is LegalZoom is 500 per year?
I don't know what the latest prices are. You'd have to check. It looks about 500 a year, Callie.
That's what I
Right.
paid, but I had like a manufacturing business, so like I had like insurance and all of that stuff. And I don't
Oh,
know if I
sure, yeah.
lumped that in there. I just once a year it was like about $500 that I paid someone else to do something that I didn't want to have to figure out myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you think of it like a Udemy course, you spend what, 20, $50 for a Udemy course. $500 a year is what, like $40 a month? It's like a Udemy course a month.
Yeah. And what about after you done all the legal work from LegalZoom? What's after that? Let's say an app that we built is have like, I don't know, 10,000 user. What do we do? What do we do from here? Do we go and get investors?
It depends on where you want to take it, right? So you can stay with it and get investors. Now that's an area of expertise I am not familiar with. I have never had a
Right.
personal project get to a certain size. I needed to like outsource or I needed outside income. Uh, that's an option. You could try to sell your business. I mean, that's an option if you want out, or you can try to,
Mhm.
or you just shutter the business too. There's nothing stopping you from maybe you don't have a lot of users, uh, just turning it off.
Wait,
And
hold
Jay, do you have 10,000 users on your language app right now?
on. No, no, I'm just saying.
Oh,
I was
okay.
about to be like,
Oh,
yeah, that
okay.
is really impressive.
I don't know. I don't. Based on how many people who are trying to learn a new language, I feels like it is achievable goal. Um,
Get it, Jay. Get it. I love
Yeah, I
it.
get it, man.
Eric, if I was able to achieve $10,000 for my app, do you think it's impressive enough for the rest of me?
Well, I think that's incredible. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I mean, $10,000. I mean, it depends on what that means, right? Is that 10,000 people active monthly, each paying like a dollar subscription every month? Like, dude, like you don't even need a job. Just
Oh,
lean into that.
oh, yeah. I'm planning to run ads actually.
Okay, you run ads.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe that takes off on its own. I mean,
All right,
you
cool.
look at like, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, like they just did their own thing. Did they ever have like a quote unquote 9 to 5 corporate job? No, they kind of built their own thing. They were so passionate and excited about the field. They kind of did their own thing and it kind of steamrolled into something larger. And
Kind of like planting the tree, right? Like you could sit there and you could be like, should I start a company? Should I turn this personal project and deploy it and have people use it? Should I not? Would that look good? Just action, man. Plant your tree, start doing something, and then let data guide you. If it's working, yay, but you're going to gain
yeah,
experience. You're going to learn a bunch. And I don't really see the downside of it unless you
yeah,
like, sink a bunch of money into it. Like maybe, don't spend all your money on it until there's like some successful data going with it. But
sure, sure.
um, building something for yourself, I don't think ever is really bad.
And even looking at these options here, maybe that'd be a better way to phrase it. I think there's a sequence of recommendations that are going to go from easy to hard. I think signing up with something like the Collab Lab and Jingu is going to be the easiest for getting work experience. They already have a structure set up. They're already finding projects. They're going to pair you with people. They have the mentorship there. Excuse me. The next easiest is going to be partnering with that uh, business-minded entrepreneur guy because they're hopefully they can handle a lot of that complexity for you, and you can just build the stuff. And then probably the most complex is you trying to do it all on your own. So it just depends on where you are in your comfort level. But all of them can be valuable for putting that experience on your resume.
Cool. Who else has a question? On Mike.
I have another question. Um, So it's a little cynical, but I've
Love
seen
it.
a lot of advice on effective networking on LinkedIn recently. And I think all of it is good and it's sound. It's like, make connections, offer to help, follow up, and like, don't just make it about yourself, like be like an asset to someone else. Um, the more I read about it, the more effective networking just sounds like making friends. Is that like crazy, or am I just like so jaded right now?
No, I think it's a great way of summarizing it. It's just being intentional about who you're developing friendships with. Like I'm not going to my local D&D group and just like playing Dungeons and Dragons and like hoping, we talk about jobs and tech, right? It kind of just happens. That might happen, but it's really about like connecting with other people that are in the similar space. And they're going to be aware of opportunities that you're not aware of. Callie mentioned early on, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're connecting with other professionals in your space that are maybe further along in the journey than you, they can help point out pitfalls, etc., that you aren't aware of. Especially if you connect in your local market, like go to local meetups, you can know more about what tech stack and skills people are hiring for. You can know who's hiring in your local area. And the meetup that I help co-organize, it is maybe 2/3 entry-level folks. Either they got a job or they're recently been hired. So Eric, what's the point of going to that if we're all in the same boat, right? Nobody knows what they're doing. That's like maybe even a better group to connect with. Because when somebody from that group gets hired, we now know of a company that hires entry-level developers. We can all swarm on them. Whereas right now, we're all doing the same thing. One of the downsides of remote work is that now every job that posts itself as remote, the competition for that job has now increased like 1,000-fold. I'm in Dallas. I am now competing with every other developer in the entire country when there's a remote opening there. But if you focus on like your local market with recommendations based off of your network, the competition isn't as fierce for those.
Totally.
Yeah,
My the PHP job, I applied and I was like, there's no way they're gonna call me back. But it was a local company that was like 20 minutes down the road, and I'm pretty sure they had like just me apply. So like, you know what I mean? Like I live in Michigan. It's not like a coding hub, but yeah, if you haven't looked into local jobs, definitely look for some obscure ones. Like the one I applied for was called developer.
That was just the name of it, developer.
That was just the name of the job, developer. So yeah, look local for sure. That's a great advice.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for like how to find local listings or how to find like local networking opportunities?
Yeah, so two common ones. The first one is just meetup.com. So I used it as an example here for talking about local startup groups, meetup.com, entrepreneurs event, near wherever you are. You also type in, software development, React, meetups or whatever. And that's how you can connect with like technology groups. That'd be a good place to start.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
And looking at the chat here. Okay, I don't see any further questions there.
All right. Anybody left? We got 2 minutes if you want to squeeze one in.
Well, it's been a great conversation with all of you. Great questions. Callie, thank you for letting me steamroll the conversation here. I appreciate
was
you having
so
me
good.
on.
Thank you so much for coming. And this was really insightful. And I hope everybody got some stuff out of it. Shameless plug as always. But guys, our deploy and public cohort starts next Thursday. I started recording this week. So everybody get super pumped for some AWS and
Oh
some
yeah, I'm
deployment.
excited, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think it's going to be really fun. We're going to deploy a bunch of applications and hopefully learn a bunch in the process too. And we're going to do it in public. So we hopefully can get some recognition and maybe some people hired. We'll see. But yep, so sign up for that if you want. The first assignment drops next Thursday. But otherwise, I will see everybody next Thursday at 8 p.m. for our next speaker, who happens to be the person who gave me my first opportunity in tech, John Dye, my boss at Moody's Analytics. And he's going to be talking all about kind of how to stand out and how to get the attention of hiring managers and recruiters.
Perfect. It sounds like a great session.
It's going to be cool. Eric, you're very welcome.
Sorry,
Oh, thanks.
Sorry,
Yeah,
just one more thing I want to say. Currently I'm working my ass off on my project. It might be too much for me or for one person. If anyone want to join my project, you drop me a message, and we may able to lead to a startup. So
Oh my
yeah.
God. Yes, you're going to have
That's great.
10,000 users, guys. Join
I love
Jay's
the
project.
optimism. I love it.
All right. That's it for
Perfect.
me.
I'm very excited for you, Jay.